right, so I'm just going to go over stage lighting basics. What did I just knock over? A bottle. It's a lot of information to cover in a short amount of time, so I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible, and hopefully one day we'll get together and do this at the theater, and I can actually kind of do some hands-on stuff. So, all right. So what we're going to cover today is basic electricity, lighting instruments, the creative process, and color theory, and a little bit, covering a little bit of each one. So my Roman Colosseum picture there. What is electricity, and why is it important for a theater? So let's see. Obviously, the technical term of it is electricity is a flow of electrons through a medium, basically a conductor. Copper is the most common conductor we use. And it's so weird because I can't see what I'm doing. And then obviously the metal core, which is the copper conductor, and an electrical wire is also surrounded by rubber or plastic, which is going to be your insulators. And then resistance is also known as ohms. So basic. I'm sure you guys can see this, so you can kind of read it. Somebody's walking around. It's kind of crazy. All right, so the pressure at which causes electrons to flow is called an electromotive force, and it's also measured in volts. So just kind of keep that in mind. So your voltage is measured, is the actual measure of electrons. Just think of it as a battery. Battery is typically a AA battery is 1.5 volts. So in theater and basically everywhere, it's not really the voltage that's going to hurt you, it's the amperage, which goes on to our next slide. The speed at which electrons flow is also called current, and that is also measured in amps or amperes. Now in theater we have dimmer racks, and each dimmer rack has 2 packs inside of it. Those packs obviously are controlled by an on-off switch or your circuit breaker. Those are 20 amps each. So when you're hooking up a signal or hooking up a lighting fixture, you want to make sure that you don't overload your circuits or add too many fixtures to a single channel, because then it can cause problems on the back end of things. So the amount of electrical work is also called power. And I can't see my slide, so hopefully you guys can see it. So Ohm's law, which is a description between the description of a relationship between voltage, current, and resistance. So the equation for that is E equals I times R. So if you know what your voltage is, or if you don't know what your voltage is, but you know what your amps are and your current, you'll be able to figure this out. So you're going to divide 120 into 20, and that'll give you your amps, which is 6 ohms. Again, this isn't like super important in theater with what we do. It's just something to throw out there so you kind of get an idea of what electricity is and how you can kind of calculate things on the fly. The big one that we use here, and this is all of the equations that you can use, but converting watts into amps. So if we have 1,000 watt fixture, how many amps is it going to pull? So what you do is, is there any way I can move these pictures over? Let's see. Aha, there we go. That's better.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
The slides okay?
Yeah, I had move the pictures over, or the video over to my left so I can see what I was reading. All right, so what you want to do is you want to calculate for amps. So what you're going to do is divide your watts into your volts, and that will give you your amperage. It's important to know what wattage each fixture is at its peak power, obviously, because you can still run a 1,000-watt fixture at 50%, and it's only going to equate to about 500 watts of power. Can you take care of the boy? Mm-hmm. So again, when you're calculating how many fixtures you can daisy chain onto a single circuit, just remember that our dimmer packs at the theater are 20 amps each, which typically is going to equate to 2 to 3 max, because our LECOs that we have are 1,000-watt LECOs. I wouldn't go over 3 fixtures per circuit when you're trying to tie in your lighting package into a plot. What did I do? Okay. So any questions so far? I know it's a lot of math at the beginning. I'm trying to get the cruddy stuff out of the way. No questions?
No, that's good, Tina, that what we're really looking at is the 20 amp limit.
Yeah. And we always want to keep it under 20 amps. You want to keep it at about 15 amps max. So being able to do some simple math while you're rigging stuff up and tying fixtures in together, it'll keep you from overloading and possibly damaging the lighting system that we have at the theater, or damaging yourself. So that brings me to the next thing, is electrical safety. So obviously, common sense. First things first, make sure it's turned off or unplugged. Do not work on a fixture, or actually don't even touch the dimmer box without Andrea being there. But do not work on a fixture, change its lamp, or screw in any loose ends or anything, and make sure it's completely disconnected and it's on the ground. Don't work on anything overhead. So make sure that any equipment that has damage to it, you want to take down completely anyway, and let somebody that is certified to work on it. Unless you have had training, you don't want to be replacing electrical cables and power cords and stuff like that on something that you don't know what you're doing. And then make sure everything's grounded. Again, using the simple math that we went over with earlier. Don't overload your cables, your circuits, your dimmers. Don't try to plug 10 things into one outlet. It's just not going to work. Before changing a lamp, make sure everything's disconnected from the power source. So unplug the fixture. I'm sure people have seen me change lamps while they're still up on the ground. Best practice is to make sure you take the fixture down and put it on the stage floor, and then change the lamp, and then go back up and hang it. And then when you're focusing a fixture, make sure that there's someone at the console or at the light board to change the intensity for you. Or to shut it off in case there is an emergency. Safety first. Those lights get very, very hot, so you can burn yourself. You can melt cables. You can melt tie line. I always focus. Rebecca usually there with me, and she'll run it at about 20 to 30% when I'm focusing, just so the light doesn't get too hot, and I can still kind of adjust things and move them around. Okay, so our next section is lighting fixtures. We have 3 types of lighting fixtures at the theater that we use. So I'm going to go over those 3 a little bit more than I would say a moving fixture, even though one day we'll end up with those. The the most common fixture we have is a LECO, or ellipsoidal reflector spotlight. All of ours are 50-degree spots, so not a whole lot you can do as far as making a tighter beam. Shush, Jack. Making a tighter beam, or trying to make it look good. It's generally used for a wash. Jack, shut up. So one of the good things about having a LECO is that you do have shutters, and those shutters, you're able to kind of cut off corners or angle the beam. Sorry, my dog is going crazy. Hush. You also can sharpen the beam angle on those, or make it softer. You're able to change the colors in them using gels. They're pretty versatile to use. I use them a lot for specials, backlights. At the very, very back end of the theater, I'll use them for a longer throw to help fill in some spots for, towards the front of the stage. I've got a couple pictures too to show you after. So if you look at the screen on the far left, that's actually some LECOs, those white beams that are coming down. I actually threw in some gobos. That's at my theater in Montgomery. And using a lot of haze, you can kind of see the beams that project down from the actual fixture onto the gobos, or through the gobos and then onto the stage.
Explain what a gobo is. The light filter that you put in the instrument. Yeah.
I got a slide on that. Short of it is the gobo is typically a piece of metal that has been cut, and it allows light to go through certain parts of the actual filter. It goes in front of the iris, but behind the lenses. There's a big slot in the top of the fixture that you can put the gobo in. So that way, when you are projecting onto a stage or onto a wall, or wherever you want to focus your gobo, it will project the image that you have. There you've got stars, you've got moons, you've got breakup patterns like that, trees, and that's the most common ones that we use in the LECOs. Now, moving lights have internal gobos, which I'll go over later. In the second photo there, you can see this is a Diablo at the Goose Theater. Off to the right-hand side of that is what we call a boom. Those booms have arms on them, and you can see the LECOs that we have hanging from that actual boom. That boom is 25 feet tall. Those are used for side lights in dance theater. The bottom one is called a shin buster. So it helps with lighting the sides of dancers, and if they do flips and stuff like that, it'll catch their feet. It's a neat little thing, but a lot of the lights that we use for this particular show were LECOs, so it's kind of showing what we used on the sides and overhead. I have a picture that actually shows the actual lighting grid that we hung overhead and spent 6 hours focusing. And then on the far right is the King and I at the AACT. Rebecca and I were both head electricians for that show. If you look on the wall that's behind the actors, you can see what a good breakup pattern is, and that is being projected from a LECO above with a gobo in it. So the next one is a par, or a par can. The ones we have at the theater don't look like this. One day they will, I hope. But they're generally, it's short for a parabolic reflector. Typically, we use pars in washes, and they basically fill the gap in the stage. I use those a lot if, I think The Little Prince is probably the hardest show I've ever had to light because we did it in the round. And with the absence of a ton of Fresnels, it was I had to go and use pars to kind of fill in the gaps. So this particular par is a ETC Source 4 par that's in the picture. What's great about those is that you can actually change out the lenses. If you look in the very center of the light itself, there's a little tab at the bottom, and you just pop that tab and the lens falls out and you can change it. They come with 4 different lenses, which is great. So you can have a very, very narrow lens, a narrow lens, a medium lens, and a wide lens. And what those do is those allow a certain amount of light to filter through, and then it kind of spreads it out. So that's a good overall wash light that I use a lot at the MPAC, and for my overhead lights as well. Here's a good example of what pars can do. So in the very far left, we had some overhead lighting, and what we did is we used pars for overheads, and also for the backdrop, for the actual backdrop behind the singers. And it's a very, very just nice wash using a wide angle lens. Now, if you look at the top right photo, that is actually those are all the old style pars, the par cans that we're used to, that you see in the theater that we have. In that particular rig, I have 60 lights that are 1,000 watts each. And all I do is I change the gels out for different concerts, and I focus them, and I run a lot of haze, and you can actually get that beam effect using a very narrow lens. And then the bottom picture, if you look at the white lights coming straight down over the set, if you look close, you can kind of see a little bit. You see some blue lights and some white lights. The blue and white is actually part of that 60K rig that's in the top picture. And the 4 lights that are just above it are also pars with a very narrow lens. And we have them angled up and out. So when we actually raise that pipe up, it creates a nice little beam through the haze. It's pretty neat thing. But there's a lot you can do with pars besides just a general wash. It just depends on the atmospheric conditions that you can use inside the theater. Obviously, we can't use a lot of haze because it doesn't go away. But it does use. I mean, you can use these for a nice wash. And Fresnel, this is my go-to in our theater. My front wash is primarily Fresnels and a few pars and Licos. But if you notice in any of the plays that we did this year, I'd say about 60% of the lighting was done with Fresnels. And what I do is I use a warm color inside the gel holder to make it nice and soft and look more natural. The only time I use a lot of dramatic color is if I'm trying to set a scene. And those will be used in my backlighting and the specials that I use off to the sides or overhead. So the Fresnel is a good medium in between, because you can actually adjust the lens and move it in or out. You can actually interchange the lenses too, if we have them. But it gives you a nice soft wash. It lights everybody nice and evenly. There's no hard spots. You don't have to worry about focusing or cutting off shutters and stuff like that. So what I do is hang them from stage right to stage left, try to do it evenly across so everybody's in the same light if it's a single set. And what we're moving to in the future one day, I use these at work. These are intelligent lighting or moving headlights. Essentially, it's everything you want in one light. It can be a beam, it can be a wash. They have hybrids that actually can do beam, wash, laser, points, everything, gobos. The newer ones are LED, so it's a lot easier to adjust color. The older ones, I have a couple of Philips Verilights that I use at work, those actually use color wheels. So if I were to try and use an amber from my console and say, I want this light to be amber, it turns it yellow. So it's kind of crazy, but technology has come a long way. This gives you the ability to create a bunch of different scenes. Anything from crazy disco to a nice wash all the way across the back if you need it to be. So here's a couple examples here. 3 different shows I did this year at the MPAC. The first one on the right is Alice Cooper, or on the left is Alice Cooper. You can kind of see what those moving lights do. If you look at the floor, you can see that the beams are kind of dancing around. You got a nice wash of red behind. Those are actually Max that we use, and then of course the white lights up and about. Luckily, everything was preloaded on a truss, so it wasn't too hard to load in. The second one on the top was Jason Allen, and we did his show in February, I think. If you look at the very, very front part of the stage where the apron is, you can kind of see what looks like a flower. That's what a gobo effect does in a light, in a moving light. So you can actually create patterns instead of having a piece of metal that separates the light. The light actually is separated by a glass gobo, and you can create flowers and stars, whatever is programmed into it or that gobo wheel has on it. And then the bottom one is Black Jacket Symphony, Hotel California. And my good friend Gabe, he's the lighting designer for them. I got to work with him. I've worked with him on several shows. But this one here is kind of neat because it shows you what you can do as far as beams, and then kind of accenting. In the very center at the top is a video wall that we use for that show. But it also shows you kind of the power of color too, and what you can do, and still keep your band lit using a front wash. So,
Tina, these are really fabulous photos. I love these.
thanks.
How much does that Mini Max cost? I mean, aren't they about $1,000?
Those ones are really expensive. Yeah, they're anywhere from $1,000 to $2,500 depending on what kind you get. There's some Chauvet professional, not the DJ ones, but the professional ones. If you go on uselighting.com, you can get them for about $350 to $450 each.
Yeah, I think we used some during, I want to say that was Peter Pan or Jungle Book or something like that. We rented some. Mm-hmm. And they cost a lot of money. We had to have an extra circuit put in the Dempsey because we didn't have the power to run them. But they're wonderful. It's like a spotlight that's pre-programmed. You don't need somebody pointing it. It just knows where to go.
It knows exactly where to go. Yeah. And that's what's neat about having those lights too, is you can program the light to actually track somebody. If you know that they're going to be in a position A and they end up in position C, you can track their movement just by programming it into the actual console as the lighting cue. So there's a lot of Broadway shows that do that same thing. Instead of having a spotlight or a spot op, they use the front wash or the front rig or the first electric, and put a beam or a wash on it, and they create a spotlight effect. So let's see, Michael Ray, he was, I worked a festival last summer. So if you look at the picture on the, Isabel.
Izzy, come here.
Sorry, my dog is trying to sit on my lap. Anyway, I worked at a country music festival last summer. Michael Ray was the first night act that first night that I was there. So I got to take some really cool pictures of his lighting rig. I was at front of house, so I didn't get to go play on stage, but I got to hang out at front of house, which was neat. So if you look at the very back, he's got a ground road that's set, and those are actual moving lights that they use as beams that shine straight up. They use a lot of haze, a ton of haze, but they were outdoors, so it was amazing that they could get this effect outdoor. And then of course, they have LED strips around each. If you look at the very top of the grid, you can see where those LED strips are. If you look at the picture to the right of that, at the very top, where those LED blocks, they look like blocks, you can see that they're all moving lights around it. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's about 40 lights per section there that shined over the video wall. The video wall was 110 feet long. That kind of gives you a perspective of size. And the bottom one is another shot of what some moving lights can do on stage. That is Hotel California, also with Black Jacket Symphony at the MPAC. So a little haze, a little light, and you kind of got some cool flashy stuff going on. So any questions so far? Okay. So I gotta move my thing here. I gotta go back. There we go. Okay, so well, I can't see what I'm seeing now. So why is lighting so important? Obviously, you can't see an actor if you don't have light on them. That's the number one given. It also allows you to create a mood or create an atmosphere. It also helps support the story or the song that you're lighting. So it also lets you balance out things and enhance who's on stage, where they're at, where you want the people to look as far as focus goes. You can black out areas of the stage that don't need to be lit. So that way they're not looking at a corner store when they're supposed to be looking at the hospital bed. And you can also create time. You can create weather. There's so much you can do with light besides just lighting the actor. It helps you create, it helps the performance altogether, but also helps you with time and weather and what the actual setting is supposed to be. So visibility. If the audience can't see the actors, everything else the lighting designer does is a waste of time. That's pretty much right. If you can't see the actors, then what's the point in lighting the set? Again, this doesn't mean the audience has to see everything. Obviously, you can create zones, which I do a lot in our theater. And we shut off those zones and light the part of the stage that needs to be lit, unless it's a single set that we use for the entire play. What's good is you can pretty much put the light where you want it or need it and make it work. The picture is Alice Cooper again. The point I was trying to make there is you got to have front light. You got to be able to see, the audience has got to be able to see who's on stage. So that's the most important part of lighting. And then my picture of the Little Prince. Creating a mood or an atmosphere. So being able to create that, this was a special that we did. And you have to be able to kind of picture in your mind what you're going to do. But obviously, when we go over colors, you'll see kind of what works and what doesn't work. Obviously, blue is going to be either nighttime, or it's going to be sad, or it's cold. Those are some of the adjectives that you could use to focus on a blue light. What I did here is I took a par and placed it overhead, and then I had 2 Fresnels that were mounted on some wood, and created a backlight effect for the actors. So when they stepped into the light, you would see just pretty much a silhouette, which is what I was going for. Composition, the act of painting a picture, or in this case, painting with light. That's what I do. Everyone asks, what do you do? I'm like, I paint with light. That's pretty much what I do. So lighting can be used for, obviously this is a Diavolo, and that was my single focus point in this show, was the very end, where I had to take a ground light and shine it on the dancer at the very end, and it created a very nice silhouette for the audience, and also lit her from the back. But it was a neat little trick that we did for this show. But painting with light, obviously, using specials, using color, being able to paint a whole picture with just light, because everything you do is complementing the actor at this point.
Tina, can I ask you a question about that last slide?
Yeah, go for it.
Where did you take this photo from? So you were actually behind her when you took this photo?
Yeah, I was.
The audience saw something different, right?
Yes, the audience saw a silhouette. So if you light someone from the back, all you see is a silhouette of that person. I was the deck electrician for this show, so that was my job right there, was to make sure that light got shined on her and on the boat when the boat was in its position, and that was at the Gouge. And Diavolo again. Being a deck electrician has its advantages because you can get some really good pictures. So reinforcement, obviously, reinforcement is something we do when we want to emphasize the playwright's text. Obviously, Dawn is the lighting designer can reinforce that by providing rays of light, creating a setting of what it looks like when the sun rises as far as color goes. We can also reinforce a set, which is what we did here with this show. We use gobos in 50-degree licos and focus them on the actual moon there to create the crater effect that the dancers, they jumped in and out and did their little acrobatic things inside with that moon. And Rebecca dropped that on her foot, and it wasn't light. Also, highlighting costumes and sets with the lighting or the colors that you use in your lighting to create a three-dimensional landscape. The revelation of form. So looking at a 3D landscape, in some productions, you might want to have a flat look, but then you might also want something to look more sculpted. It also helps with the composition of mood. So if you look at this, it's a kabuki drop at the Alice Cooper concert that I did. We had 2 LEDs, LED mover lights that we focused on each eye. There's actually 2 eyes. So the beginning of the show, as the lights go out, you don't see this, and then all of a sudden they start glowing red. That's creating a mood or some suspense as to what's about to happen when that kabuki falls, which is a pretty neat experience. Obviously, telling the story. You can see here in the picture is a story being told. Do you know what's going on right there? You know, lighting does a lot to help tell the story. Obviously, it's not going to be exclusively telling the story because actors have to do their part as well. But without lighting, if I just had a front wash on him, I mean, would you really get what was going on? Would you be able to see the set behind him and everything like that? That's essentially what lighting is. It's kind of making everything else pop along with the actors. So, any questions? Nope. All right, we're moving on. The creative process. So the Guacamole Queens, one of my shows that I did last year with you guys. It's gonna be a very, very brief overview of the lighting design process. Researching the play. It's very important that you get the script as a lighting designer. You read it 1, 2, 3 times, 4 times if you need to. You got to figure out where is the set? You know, where are we at? Is it a different country, a different time? What kind of light is there, or would there be? Is it Norway in the summer, or is it New York? You know, obviously the Guacamole Queens was set in Texas at a bridal salon. So if anybody's been to a bridal shop, you know, there's chandeliers hanging everywhere. That was kind of the idea of this picture here, is to kind of focus in on that practical that I have there, which is a chandelier, to kind of make it a set piece, but also make it a lighting piece as well. So obviously, who is your creative team? Look, there's Andrea. So if you don't know who you're working with, it's best that you find out. Sit down with them. That's the most important thing. What vision does the director have? Obviously, I'm not reading this verbatim, but what vision does the director have? What did you see in the script? What can you kind of mesh together with the director's vision, and what you see is, going to complement the set and stuff like that. Meeting with the costume designer is important. You don't want to clash colors when you're designing your lighting plot. Meeting with the set designer, super important, because the set designer kind of makes or breaks what you do as far as lights go. If you have a certain amount of space, you can't really put lights behind the set because it's not going to work. So working very closely with a set designer. Also, you don't want to clash with any of the paint schemes or any of the backdrops or the set pieces that are going to be on stage with any weird colors like green. We don't use green often. So obviously, I mentioned this a second ago, the pre-production meeting. That's actually the time when I go in and I listen more so than talk. And at the very end of the meeting, I'll throw around some ideas or suggestions on what I think, it should look like.
You're not going back outside.
My dog again. The last show that we did, what was it? High School Musical Junior. That was a lot of fun to do because I kind of went in with an idea of what needed to happen as far as the general lighting concept goes, but what did I want to do as far as specials? What did I want to do as far as helping the set pop? Obviously, we use a lot of red. So using red uplight and using some gobos with a red gel, that helped out with lighting the set and kind of helping it pop in certain parts of the play as well. But obviously, you want to make sure you know everybody that's going to be involved on the tech side of things, and getting to know what everybody wants and seeing if it's something that can happen or if it's not going to happen. Being able to communicate that effectively and quickly, so everyone else can make adjustments. So the picture on the left-hand side there, you guys seen several photos of Diavolo, which was the first dance show that we put on at the Goose Theater, at the Goose Performing Arts Center at Auburn. That is our lighting rig, overhead lighting rig. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 electrics. I had the joy of focusing every single solitary light on that rig in the air. So if you see my Facebook photo, my home photo or whatever it is, you see a picture of me up in a lift, and that was me focusing this show. So the run through, hopefully as a lighting designer, you'll get to see several run throughs. In the business that I'm in, I do a lot of concert lighting, a lot of dance lighting, and a lot of it's one-offs. So I don't get the ability to see a run through. I get to see a sound check, and if I'm the LD that's there that day, sound check is the only time I get to see where people are going to be standing and kind of focus my lights at that point. So it really gives you, you can get everything up in 4 hours. You're going to wait 4 hours, and then the last 30 minutes before the show, you get to go and focus everything. So doing a play is a treat for me because I actually get to sit down and watch a few rehearsals. That's when I take notes, and notes are going to be imperative as a lighting designer because you've got to make sure, one, you know where the end of the stage is going to be, two, where the actors are going to be, three, what the atmosphere is, four, what specials are you going to use. There's a bunch of things you got to take into consideration while you're watching a rehearsal. And then taking those notes and getting back with the director and stuff like that, and being able to kind of finalize things before you start doing a full focus. And then that's why I wait. A lot of people wonder why I wait till the dress rehearsal or a rehearsal or so before we go into tech week, before I get the focus done. That's because blocking always changes, and you never know if an actor's going to be stage right or stage left from regular rehearsal to tech week. So things change, and you got to be able to kind of turn on a dime. So I tend to wait, and it's not procrastination, it's by design, to make sure that things are in their places, people are in their places and stuff before I start tweaking lights and making sure they're 100% ready to go. But by tech week, everything's done, ready to go, focused, and programmed into the console. So also the run through, it helps you create a cue sheet. Can you get them out of here? You can create a cue sheet and start kind of lining out, character Joe is going to be staged right. All right, I got to make sure I have a light stage right so we can see his face. When he says this, what happens after this line, I'm going to make sure that, the backlight comes up and it's nighttime. So it gives you a lot of time to plan, because that's what lighting design is a lot of planning and then action at the very end. And then once you get to your programming and hang and focus, it's all done in 2 days. So lists. That's going back to note taking, stuff like that. You got to be able to, one, have a list of your lighting elements. Obviously your pars, your licos, your Fresnels. How many do you have of each? What colors are you going to use for each scene? One thing that we do have in the lighting gel box backstage is a swatch book of different gel colors. 9 times out of 10, I can get the gel, or I have the gel in my possession. I've used some funky colors this past year that I never thought I'd use, and I've used some normal colors, some of the reds and stuff that I use on an everyday basis. So that way, once you make a list of everything, you know what fixtures you have, you know what colors you want to use, it makes transitioning into doing a lighting plot and programming your lighting cues a lot easier. So this is actually, I use a magic sheet. If you look to the left, this is a magic sheet of a set, and that's what I use more for our theater than anything, because it's easier for me to light based on where set pieces are going to be, and then do a general wash up front where the acting space is. So obviously there's a whole bunch of different things that you can do, but each one is a circuit number and a channel number of what goes into actually programming. But it gives you an idea of, okay, the set looks like this, the acting spaces are in circles, these are the areas that I'm going to have to light. So you also want to make sure you have your channel number, your dimmer number. Circuit numbers, not so much. We run on dimmer numbers and channel numbers at our theater. So with the new console, everything is -20. So the easiest way to say is circuit number or dimmer number 1 is now is circuit number 20, or channel number 20. So that goes into programming, which is a whole different class. um, so the type of fixture that you're using, the wattage of the fixture, that's very important so you don't overload your dimmer rack. The purpose, is it a special or is it a zone, area 1, area A? Accessories, templates, which is templates are also gobos. So if anybody says hand me a template, it's also a gobo. And then the colors that you're going to use for the set as well. So a couple of rigging pictures. So on the left is my favorite light in the entire world. That's a Clay Packy Sharpie. That was used on Clay Walker's, not Clay Walker. Was it Clay Walker? I can't remember. One of the country guys that we had at the MPAC. The rig that's to the upper right-hand side, that is the actual rig that those Sharpies are on. And that's what creates a really nice beam effect. And they, they can move and twirl and all sorts of stuff. Those are really nice beams. And then of course the lighting rig from above for Diavolo at the GPAC. So hang and focus. Obviously, this is the lighting plot. Our lighting plot is pretty stationary with the exception of me moving fixtures here and there. But if you are working at a theater with a fly rail, obviously a lighting plot is going to come in really handy because you want to know where you're going to hang each fixture, which pipe it's going on, which angle it's going at. And at the bottom, typically your lighting designer or lighting director will have a copy of the lighting plot. And you just take that lighting plot and start hanging stuff up, and then it goes on to focus from there. But you'll want a general front wash for actors and scenery, specials and backlighting for setting the time of day, the place, i.e. desert. Yeah, the Little Prince was a big desert scene for me. And then breakup patterns, templates, or gobos. Obviously, you want to hang your fixtures according to the plot that the LD gives you, or if you are the LD, you want to make sure that your electricians hang the lights the way they're supposed to be with the actual the fixtures that you want there. You don't want to have a Lico where a par is supposed to be because it's going to look weird, and you have to swap them around. And then focus, and then you're going to focus your fixtures on zones, acting areas, using the magic sheet from here. Which is going to make things a lot easier. But rarely do we use this in our theater. These are typically used in with fly rail systems that we have at our bigger theaters that I work at. So.
Hey, Tina,
yeah.
Describe to them that our room at the Dempsey, everything is static, nothing moves. We have to move all the lights all around. But
Yep.
if we were in another theater, there would be fly rails and you could just fly this whole pipe full of lights down and shine them and then, just fly it back out like a backdrop. It would make all the difference in the world if we had that kind of thing. But we're limited to where the pipes are. We can't even move the pipes. We got to hang the lights where the pipes are.
Yep, you have a static grid is what they call it in the industry, is a static grid. So yeah, we don't have the luxury of being able to bring in a pipe and take off lights and put on lights and angle lights the way we want to. We've got to go with what we have, which is about 15 feet in the air. And you can physically take the lights down and move them into other positions as long as there's a circuit there for you to plug into. And then do your focus like that. But for the most part, it's very static. You can again change the fixtures around and move, change colors and stuff like that, and change angles. But actually bring in pipes and stuff like that. Maybe one day we'll have the facility to do that in to make it a little easier.
Well, I think that's what was so difficult about the little prints being in the round, because you'd like to be 10 feet away and make that choice, but you can't make that choice because the pipe is 15 or 20 feet away. We just
Yeah.
didn't have choices to make.
Yeah, and without having extensions or arms to be able to hang the lights lower, it was a feat. I think we used almost every single lighting fixture we had just for that play. Uh, Only using the backlights for specials, and the rest of it was a wash. It was all a general wash because we had to light such a huge area, and you're talking 40 feet out and 15, 20 feet across. Um, and that's a big space to light up with a static grid. All right, so what is a gobo? This is my last part on the whole lighting things. So a gobo, what does it mean? It means go between optics, or goes between optics. So a gobo is a metal or a glass plate that's put into a holder, and you slide that into a slot in top of a Leco, that is behind the lenses of the Leco, but in front of the iris of the Leco. Moving lights have them in the same place. It's behind the lens in front of the iris. The cool part about moving lights is you don't have to pull them in and out. They're there, and you get to just choose which one you want, based on the package, the kind of lighting package that you have. Any questions? Nope. You
I
guys?
have a question.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. What skin tones or types are easier or harder to light? Like of olive and dark skinned people easy to light or pale? I'm just curious.
White people are the hardest to light. I'm serious. Because I'm Hispanic, and African American and Hispanics, we're pretty easy to light because there's a single gel that you're going to use, which is an RO2, which is a bastard amber, and it gives you a nice flesh tone without creating shadows.
Hmm.
And if you use something that's a little bit like an RO3, which is just a regular amber, if you put that same color on someone that's Caucasian, they tend to look a little sunburned. So
Interesting.
yeah, just like using colors, which I'm about to go into, you don't want to use colors, too many colors up front, because there's so many different acting faces. So you try to stick with a cool and a warm balance. I use as an LED correction, a Lee 301, 201. It's a very, 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 very pale blue, almost like the daylight color you get out of an LED bulb in your kitchen. And then the RO2. So I color mix those together to kind of get you a nice even blend, almost like a traditional house light, what you get with turning on a lamp.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. All right, so using color, good lighting, bad, and blinding. So obviously color helps you tell a story, tell the time, the atmosphere itself, whether it's tense, whether it's energetic. I love color. I love using lots of color. But as I was going through my photos earlier, I noticed that with all the different lighting designers that I've worked with from around the world and myself, we tend to use a lot of purple and magenta in the in the backlight scheme of things, and then the rest of them are accent lights. So on the left here, it kind of is a little chart of color, and what it can mean, what it is symbolic for. Like purple can be wealth and luxury. It's also creativity. It's also just a really pretty color. Blue is cold. I think I went over that earlier. Cold or tense or sad. Green, don't ever use green. Or yellow. No, yellow is good if you're doing a sunrise, or even an amber and orange. with some red and pink thrown in. Sunrise, sunset, midday, energetic, happy times. Red, anger is the biggest thing that comes to mind there. Anger, heat, power. Those colors typically in a play setting, you're going to be using these for your backlights or your specials anyway. Obviously, black is blackout, so you're not going to get a black gel. They just don't exist. So using color to set a scene. Where are we? What time of day is it? What is the general mood? What feelings do you get from the actual color you're using? So a little interactive here. What time of day is this? If you look at the picture, what time of day do you think this is in The King and I? It's evening.
Is it afternoon?
Dusk.
Like late afternoon?
Yeah, dusk, sunset, evening time. Late afternoon, as you can see that we had the breakup there, which could be the sun is setting. So also, what is this? I don't know if you can see the whole picture or not. But if you look at the acting space, what is the light physically doing to the actors? It's separating them. If you look at the breakup on the wall there, it creates separation. That's something else that lights do that a lot of people kind of overlook, is you can actually create a space with just a single light and kind of elongate the stage or create distance between actors. So it not only tells the story, time of day, things like that, but it also, you can help create a set. So Andrea, you're asking what a backlight does to a dancer or what the audience sees. That is a backlight. We used, this is The King and I, it's this cyc light, and there are LED lights behind it, shining white. So that's what you see from the audience perspective of a backlight. So you can use color to create suspense. You can create the mood. Mystery, evil. Is it good, hot? Is it cold? Using the right colors can be effective. It can be dramatic. And sometimes using less creates more of an effect. It just depends on what kind of effect you're trying to create. But a simple white light, actor standing in front of it, creates a really, really cool, dramatic silhouette. So what feeling does this scene convey? Is it hot, exciting, chilly, cold, distant, sad? You know, I would say cold, sad, with the amount of blue that's being used in that space. So being able to set that up, those two front shining lights are actually spotlights that are in the spot booth. But being able to create that with a special or a special effect, single light, two lights can create an entire scene. So is the story being told? How do how do the colors complement the costumes in this photo? Obviously, we're using a lot of magenta here, and white, black, and red are the colors that are the costumes are on stage. So it actually complements, feeding a little magenta or red into the lighting scape behind, or the backlighting, helps kind of make the colors pop to the audience, especially when they're all wearing black and white. The only time that green is acceptable is if you're doing Frankenstein. Don't want to use green. As a lighting designer myself, I stay away from green. I'll go scuba, which is an aqua color. That's as green as I go because it makes everybody look ill on stage. Doesn't mean go. You could use green as go. Red means stop. I mean, you can use any color for whatever meaning you want it to mean, as long as it kind of makes sense in the scene itself. So obviously, if you're doing a scene, actor's in a car and he's at a stoplight and you shine a green light on his face, I mean that's a that's a good indicator that, oh, he's got a green light, he needs to go. So same with red. I wouldn't do it for too long because actor might get annoyed. But yeah, creating atmosphere, creating a special effect, color is all of that. What did you do that for? You made it sound like a party. Most scenes when you're creating color, we all 99.99% of the time it's all backlight. To shine a color on an actor's face, you're asking for trouble. You don't want to, and my next slide will kind of tell you that. But using the backlight is really good to help create the time of day, specifically to create the mood, to kind of, is it going to be a suspenseful scene? Is it going to be a cold scene? Is it winter? And if you notice a lot of my designs, I do use a lot of backlight to kind of help set the scene, the time, the day, things like that. Don't use color in your front wash. Why? Because it can make your scenery look wrong. It can make your characters look sick. It can mess up the costume designer's design, and that's the last thing you want to do is make a costume designer mad. You don't want the backlighting or the backdrops or the painted sets to take on a life of their own with the wrong color, and sometimes it just looks awful. This was a view, one of the concerts I worked. I was running spotlight for that one, and this was a bad lighting design. Don't ever shine the lights in somebody's face. I was up in the upper balcony too, so you imagine everybody else that was up in the balcony with me. Same with this, those lights shine straight to the mezzanine level. Using specials, typically I use them for atmospheric effects, for lighting, stars, moonlight, sunrises, lightning. That's a big thing. I like to use white frosted light as lightning. You just got to be able to keep in mind that wherever you point those lights, make sure they're not hitting your audience in the eyes or your spot ops. Your spot ops are typically in the audience or in the light booth. If they can't see, it kind of creates disaster for the next scene if they're needed. So I can't tell you how many times I've been blinded and can't see through my telrad to see where the guy is on stage I'm supposed to be following because I was just blinded by lights. So that's it. The rest is just kind of pictures of stuff I've worked. That's it. Let's see. How do I get out of here? Screen stop sharing. Boop. There I am.
That's really pretty.
Thank you.
That's really pretty, Tina.
Thanks. So any questions, comments? Hopefully, like one day we'll be able to do this at the theater, and I can actually take some lighting instruments and show you what they do and how to program them and stuff like that, and different gels.
I have a question, Tina.
Sure.
You know about the KISS show that you worked on, do they bring their own lighting people or their own lights, or is that designed and done by the house people?
99% of the tours bring their own gear. So they have typically they have a head electrician and a lighting designer that come with them. I typically work side by side with the lighting designer because I've got to tie him into our system and show him how the DMX works and stuff like that. But I will, yeah, we hang all of their lights for them, get them. That's why I was talking about the lighting plot. They hand us a plot, I get the lights and we hang them on the pipes. And then after everybody else leaves, it's just me and the LD doing a focus.
Okay.
Yeah. Now some of the shows I've done, like the Commodores and Lee Greenwood, they didn't travel with an LD or a lighting rig. So that was my job, is to light the show up for them. So we use our house lights. We have with the exception of a lot of big moving lights, we have a few moving lights in our theater, but we have a comprehensive lighting rig. We've got 5 electrics, cyc lights, movers. We have 2 catwalks, and a 60K. So I was able to light. I do a lot of the stuff at the MPAC when they don't have a lighting designer. 99% of the shows I do the design for, and I kind of what they call busking. I pre-program my board to different channels and different faders. And I know if I want my blue lights on, I just turn this up, or if I want my red lights on, I turn this up, or I can kind of toggle between the two. So being able to kind of go on the fly, as long as you know the music, it comes in handy. But yeah, a lot of it's on the fly.
Cool. This is very interesting. Thank you.
Thanks. No problem.
So Tina, you work at the Gouge, which seats what, 1,200? How much?
1,200. Huh?
How much?
1,200.
And then
MPAC.
Where's the Impact? I don't know where that is.
MPAC is in Montgomery. It's right across from the train station at the Renaissance Hotel. And it's a 1,800 seat theater. And I work at the Davis also, which is a block away from the MPAC. And that's a 1,200 seat.
The Davis is 1,200 seat. I thought that was a little bitty.
No, it's 1,200 seats. Same as the Gouge. Just obviously it was built in the 30s, so the layout's a little different than the Gouge.
And then you've worked at the Coliseum. You've worked at the Jan Dempsey. Where else have you? I mean, Jan Dempsey is a multi-purpose room that's 70 feet by 50 feet. That's got to be completely different from the Impact with the stage and 1,800 people. Yeah,
my stage at the MPAC is 103 by 96, and 1,800 seats. It's different, but it's a lot of fun because I can come in and do a hang focus and everything in 2 days at the Jan Dempsey, where it's a neat learning experience to work at a big theater because you put in a show, and a lot of the shows that we do aren't multi-day runs. They're single day runs. So you load in that morning, get everything hung, focused, generally programmed that same day. If I'm running it, I have to program it. If they bring their own rig, they have their own console, so it's already pre-programmed. Working that those one-offs is a lot of good experience to kind of see a whole bunch of different things in one season. I also work at East Alabama Arts at the OPAC. Their head electrician there. I've worked Kicker, Stampede, Country Stampede. I worked that last summer in Topeka, Kansas. It was my first outdoor festival, so it was kind of cool. But my main 3 gigs are at the Davis, the Gouge, and then my main job is at the MPAC at the Montgomery Performing Arts Center.
Are you getting any work right now? Are you unemployed? File for unemployment? What's going on?
Furloughed. Yeah, I'm on unemployment for the time being. I talked to my boss last night. We don't know anything really. They're looking to bring back conventions, smaller conventions, in the next 30 to 60 days. As far as the theater goes, August maybe, before we can hit 25% capacity. So we've got things scheduled in August, but we just don't know, we won't be back in full swing. I mean, so they have another meeting. We won't be back in full swing, back to where we were probably till late next year, as far as the capacity, seating capacity, and the amount and number of shows that we'll be doing per year. So in the meantime, I learn. I've been doing a lot of reading, and a lot of video watching.
Well, thank you for doing this. I love that you did this. It was very interesting, and I learned a lot from you. Our little space, sometimes I get wound up that we can't do much in our little space, but it's really not that bad. We just don't have the time to figure out how to solve all our problems.
Yeah. When you have your set build, 2 weeks before or a week before, the show starts. Makes it a little difficult and challenging, but for me, it's exciting because I can always, make a workaround or do this or do that. And, just like with the kids show that we did, what I really wanted to do, I couldn't do because the atmospheric effects wouldn't clear out in time. I couldn't use haze. So I was like, well, I can use gobos and I can use uplight and kind of create an effect, that way. And so it's been able to adapt and overcome. And luckily working at these big theaters, I have a lot in my brain arsenal of what I can and can't do. So, yep.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you, Tina.
No problem. We'll see you guys later.
Take care.
Everybody, take care.
You too. Bye, guys.